If you've ever read the ancient texts and felt just a little bit lost in the complex politics of the kings, well, let's build a visual dossier together and paint a really vivid picture of the ultimate ancient prophet. I want you to picture a baseball player, right? They pull a positioning card from their back pocket between batters so they know exactly where to stand. Well, that's exactly what we need for the Book of Kings. We're putting together an analytical cheat sheet so you know exactly where to stand and what to look for when this monumental figure steps up to the plate. And here is our definitive positioning card, mapping out the 4 conclusive traits of his life. We've got 1, an enigmatic and bold prophet, 2, brokenhearted and prayerful, 3, a type for the future, and finally, 4, the man who never died. So let's dive right into this. Who exactly was this mysterious prophet raised up during those really dark days of the 9th century BC? He appears right in the middle of the reign of Ahab, the son of Omri, and he's tasked with confronting the rampant Baal worship going on in Israel and Judah. But honestly, his arrival is highly unusual. Which brings us to section 1, an enigmatic and bold prophet. He basically steps onto the scene as a complete mystery man with absolutely no origin story. It's actually a lot like Melchizedek in the book of Hebrews. The text calls him a Tishbite from Gilead, but here's the catch. That's an unknown region. Literally, that hometown is all we know about his background. He just appears and disappears, totally at God's command. But when he does step into the light, his actions are absolutely unforgettable. Just picture these vivid scenes in your mind's eye. He stood against wicked leaders like King Ahab with the boldness of a lion. Whether it was the epic showdown of fire on Mount Carmel, that incredibly tense confrontation in Naboth's vineyard, or just standing completely fearless in the face of heavily armed soldiers, he never once blinked. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly where his courage came from. He had this deep, unshakable knowledge that he stood continually in the presence of a powerful king. He wasn't bold because of his own ego, He was bold because he was jealous for the glory of the covenant God of Jacob. He knew his God intimately, and that made him just utterly fearless. Moving on to section 2, brokenhearted and prayerful. Now, it's really easy to flip the narrative here and paint Elijah as this fearful, complaining coward running away in a panic. But if you look at the Hebrew text and Paul's commentary in Romans 11, a completely different reality emerges. He isn't quivering in fear. He is actually levying a formal covenant accusation. He's groaning in utter disappointment at Israel's rejection. He's not a coward at all. He's more like a brokenhearted prosecuting attorney. And that deep emotional investment fueled his extraordinary communication with God. He wasn't just reacting to circumstances. He proactively brought massive petitions to the table. He fervently prayed for a drought and then turned around and prayed for rain. He prayed desperately at a widow's child's deathbed. He brought incredibly large petitions on Mount Carmel. He knew he was approaching a God of immense power, so he asked for things that only a truly strong king could actually answer. This leads us to section 3. A type for the future. The biblical text makes it super clear that Elijah prefigured John the Baptizer, and this direct comparison is just incredibly striking. Basically, the Old Testament gives us Elijah so that we can properly identify John later on in the New Testament. Because both men shared these vivid, undeniable similarities. They both had highly distinctive appearances. They both turned massive amounts of God's people back to him. They both stared down intensely hostile political powers, specifically women with murderous desires, like Jezebel and Herodias. And incredibly, they both anointed their successors at the exact same location, the Jordan River. So the crucial point here is that understanding Elijah provides the definitive key to understanding the New Testament narrative. Just as Elijah points directly to John the Baptizer, Elijah's successor, Elisha points us directly to Jesus. It's this stunning typological map woven right into the historical narrative. And finally, we arrive at section 4, the man who never died. He joins Enoch from Genesis chapter 5 in an extremely exclusive club. They are unlike all the rest of the departed saints. Out of literally all the figures in biblical history, only these 2 men share this astonishing distinction. Picture this spectacularly vivid scene in your mind. A roaring fire and a massive whirlwind tearing through the sky. He never died. According to 2 Kings, he was taken up directly into heaven, his physical body still perfectly united with his soul. He never tasted death. He was simply taken up into glory in a chariot of fire. And that leaves us with this final provocative thought. Knowing he never died, and knowing his body and soul remain perfectly intact, will we see this enigmatic prophet once again on a new earth where there is no more idolatry and no more broken hearts? It completely transforms how you view his entire dossier.
It's kind of wild, right? Despite having this massive biblical footprint, Elijah is essentially a total mystery man. He just drops into the dark days of King Ahab. The text simply defines him as a Tishbite, from Tishbe in Gilead. And the crazy thing is, we don't even know exactly where Tishbe was. He has literally no recorded origin story or genealogy. He just appears and disappears at God's command.
And you know, this jarring lack of a recorded past isn't an accident. It deliberately mirrors another biblical figure, Melchizedek. The writer of Hebrews points out that Melchizedek was without father or mother or genealogy. Entering the narrative this way highlights something absolutely crucial. Elijah's authority didn't come from human heritage. It came entirely from divine appointment.
So Elijah was raised up, specifically to confront the Baal worship that was completely infecting Israel and Judah, and he operated with this fearless boldness against wicked leaders in 3 really defining standoffs: calling down fire on Mount Carmel, confronting Ahab in Naboth's vineyard, standing totally unflinching in the face of Ahaziah's soldiers. I mean, the guy had the boldness of a lion in a highly corrupt political landscape.
So, where does that kind of courage even come from? Well, he tells us point blank in 1 Kings 17:1, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand." That's the secret right there. It wasn't self-generated. His courage stemmed entirely from knowing he stood in the actual presence of the true covenant king of Israel. Earthly kings were just nothing compared to that.
Now, we've got to address a massive misunderstanding here. A lot of folks read 1 Kings 19, see Elijah fleeing to Mount Sinai from Queen Jezebel, and just assume he snapped. They think he sinfully lost his trust in God and turned into a complaining, self-pitying coward. But is that what was actually happening?
Actually, scratch that. When we really dig into the Hebrew text and listen to Paul's commentary in Romans 11:2, a completely different reality emerges. Elijah wasn't a coward hiding from a queen. He was a brokenhearted prophet groaning in total despondency over Israel rejecting the word. He went to God's mountain to levy a formal covenant accusation against the nation. And far from rebuking him, God actively listens to his heartbreak, comforts him, and gives him a brand new direction.
His entire ministry was fueled by proactive prayer. Whether he's at the deathbed of a widow's child or standing on Mount Carmel. And I love this. James 5 reminds us that Elijah was a man with a nature just like ours. He wasn't some untouchable superhero. He shared our exact human frailties, yet he's held up as the ultimate model for earnest prayer that actually accomplishes massive things.
So, how do we apply his prayer life today? Well, we follow these steps derived from his ministry. First, seek God's face proactively. Don't just react to the chaos. Second, constantly recognize God as a king of ultimate power. And third, bring massive petitions. Bring the kind of requests that only a truly strong, holy God can answer.
Okay, let's unpack what a prophetic type actually is. In biblical studies, it's a person or event that serves as a foreshadowing of a future fulfillment. It's basically a patterned preview. And Scripture explicitly states in Malachi, Luke, and Matthew that Elijah was a direct typological precursor to John the Baptizer. The side-by-side symmetry here is just unreal. Check this out. Both have incredibly distinctive clothing. Both shared the exact same mission to wake up God's people in a dark era. Both faced off against a hostile political power driven by a murderous woman, Jezebel for Elijah, Herodias for John. And both anointed their successors at the exact same spot, the Jordan River. It perfectly proves that just as Elijah points us to John, his successor Elisha ultimately points us to Jesus.
Get this, Elijah never actually died. Much like Enoch in Genesis, he was taken up directly into heaven. 2 Kings 2 tells us he was taken up by a whirlwind, with his physical body still perfectly united to his soul. He exits the world in this spectacular, unmatched demonstration of divine grace that absolutely stuns the imagination.
So what does this all mean for us? Knowing his unended story represents life victorious over death, how does it point our own hearts forward? Well, it directs our gaze to a promised new earth, a future where there is zero idolatry, where perfect righteousness actually dwells, and where there are absolutely no more broken hearts.